Welcome back. To introduce our keynote speaker, I would like to invite Kaylee Escudero, who will be presenting from our group.
Hello, my name's Kaylee. I'm a bee. Our speaker for today graduated from Baylor University. He was first in his law school class at Baylor Law School. In 2006, he was elected to the Senate, where he represents most of Travis County. He's very passionate about healthcare and active in multiple health organizations, and he is a former mayor of Texas. He is currently a partner with law firm Brown McCarroll LLP, where he works as a lawyer, mediator, and public affairs consultant. So please give it up for Senator Kirk Watson.
Nice job. Thank you. What does being a bee mean?
That's my group.
Okay.
Yes.
I had to ask her what being a bee means. I didn't want to know what that's all about. Well, I'm very excited, and I appreciate that introduction. I appreciate your warm welcome. I'm very excited about the program that you're involved in. And I'm pleased that there are so many folks. In fact, when I sat down at the table, the first thing I did is I went around the table and said, "Where are you from?" I wanted to hear where everybody was from, and I love the fact that this is made up of young people from all over the state of Texas. In addition to that, I will tell you that you are just the right age for me right now, because my youngest son will be a senior next year at Austin High School. He is away from home right now. He's also at a camp like what you're doing, although his is a chemistry camp that he's involved in. So it's very enjoyable for me to have the opportunity to get to visit with you. As mentioned in that introduction, I'm the state senator that represents most of Travis County, and with redistricting, I will now, if elected in November, I might add, if I'm re-elected in November, I'll represent most of Travis County and all of Bastrop County. I've also, yeah, there you go, got somebody from Bastrop County, I like that. Some of my constituents, that works out great. I'll talk to you right after I finish here, okay? But in addition to that, as mentioned in the introduction, I was also mayor of Austin for a period of time, and back before I was mayor of Austin, I also served, the governor appointed me, Governor Ann Richards appointed me to be chair of a state agency. That state agency was a state agency that was involved with air quality, environmental issues, and we merged it with the Water Commission to form what we now know in Texas as the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Now, the reason I mention all that to you is to lead into what I want to talk to you about. I've been involved in one way or another in public service, dealing with the kinds of issues that I know you all are looking at, everything from education to health care to environment. I was talking to Susan Nold, my general counsel, before I came over here in the Senate office. She tells me she was with a group of you this morning talking about water issues. Katie O'Brien is standing over there. Katie was talking to some of you about education. So I've been involved in some of these things. And over that time, I have put together what I call my top 10 ground rules for being involved in leadership or public policy or trying to bring about change in a positive way. So what I thought I would do today during the lunch hour is I thought I would share those 10 rules, those 10 ground rules with you if you don't mind. So let me start. Number one, throw away the labels. Throw away the labels. Now what do I mean by that? Too often, those of us that are involved in issues or government or leadership, whatever that leadership might be, we see people label each other. And once we get a label, think about this, once you put a label on somebody, then it's very easy to abdicate the responsibility to ever listen to them again, right? Oh, you're a Republican. Well, I know all I need to know about you. Oh, you're a Democrat. Well, that's all I need to know. You're an environmentalist. You're with the business community. You're an Aggie. You went to, oh, look at there, see, I know everything I need to know. He just proved it. You went to UT, you went to Baylor. What happens is we put labels on each other, And then we quit listening because we think we know everything there is to know by that label. You cannot be a successful leader. You cannot be someone that is able to bring about positive change in your community, in your school, with your friends, if you quit listening to them because you put a label. I think in politics, it's doing great damage to our country. It's doing great damage to our state that these rules of labels so strongly define us that we quit listening to one another. We need you as young people to throw away the labels. It's okay to be a Republican. It's okay to be a Democrat. It's okay to be an Aggie. But if you're going to be, and you're going to do that, don't put yourself in such a box that you never listen to the other side, if you will. Throw away the labels. Rule number 2, listen carefully and speak plainly. Listen carefully and speak plainly. Now, one of the things I tell people all the time is that too often we don't create opportunities to hear each other. We think we're listening, we think we're hearing, but we're really not. Now, I'm going to give you an example that's going to mean something to you. That kid I was just telling you about that's your age, is going to be a senior in high school next year. It is not good kid, smart kid. But it's not infrequent that he and I disagree. Because many times he thinks he's the smartest guy in our house. And I am. So what happens is we get into these discussions where sometimes our feelings get hurt. We may get a little angry with each other, maybe a little upset. And it's a couple of hours later that we'll be at the dinner table or in the family room or doing something, and we'll be talking, and one of us will think, I've seen it happen a million times. Oh, that's what you were saying? Oh, we can do, I know how we can do that and get what you want out of it and it not impact me in a negative way. We do that frequently. Because what happened was we weren't really listening to each other. We had set ourselves in a position, we had set ourselves in stone in some instances, and it was only later after all the emotion, all of the anger, all of the upset had calmed, and we were able to work it out. Now, my guess is, having some memory of what it was like to be a high school senior, that kind of happens between boyfriends and girlfriends from time to time too, right? I will tell you, my wife and I this Saturday will have been married 33 years, and it still happens there. My point being, we have to, if we want to bring about change, if we want to lead, if we want to be positive, we have to be willing to stop and figure out, are there better ways to listen and listen carefully. We also need to speak plainly. That governor I was telling you about a minute ago, Ann Richards, who appointed me to really my first job in public policy, when she appointed me chair of that state agency, she's the one that really taught me this. Because her rule was, I'm going to lay it out there. I'm going to tell the folks what I really think. I'm going to speak very plainly about it, and then let them make the decision. Too often in leadership, what happens is somebody's afraid they're going to make somebody mad, or they're going to upset somebody, or they're not going to get the attention they want, or maybe the vote that they think they need. And so what they do is they use political spin or rhetoric, or they're not talking as plainly as they should. If you want to bring about change, it's going to be important to listen carefully and speak plainly. Rule number 3, you're not going to meet everyone's concept of perfection. You're not going to meet everyone's concept of perfection. So don't try. That sounds like a pretty strong statement, doesn't it? Don't try to make everybody happy. Well, the truth of the matter is, you're not going to make everybody happy. You're never going to be in a situation where you're going to make sure that everybody in the room is happy. And too often, we find ourselves defining consensus. We want to bring about consensus. And I'm all for bringing about consensus. But we define consensus as 100% agreement. Well, the problem with that is that if you do it that way, if you say, okay, we're going to do, okay, what you want, okay, we'll do that. Here's what you want. Here's what you want. At the end of it, you may have something that's completely unworkable. It just doesn't work. Or you make the last person in the room the most powerful person on earth. Because we got what you want, 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 and the last person says, nope, not unless I get A, B, C, and D. Well, it fouls everything up. You're not going to meet everyone's concept of perfection, so don't try. Here's what I tell people to do. Follow the 84% rule. If what you can do is please 84% of your constituency, maybe not even make them completely happy. They might be saying, well, you know, that's not exactly the way I do that. That's not perfect by a long shot, but it's progress. It's moving something forward. I'm willing to try that, and I'm willing to follow on that. Take it and run. Take it and run. You may be saying to yourself, 84%. How did he come up? Why not 51%? Why not 60%? Why not 40%? Why 84%? Let me tell you how I came up with 84%. It's what I was reelected with. My rule is no matter how pretty you are, no matter how smart you are, no matter how tall you are, 16% of the population is not going to be going along with you at some point in time. And I really kind of tease about that. It may not be 84% in every instance. It may be 51%. It may be 60%. But I call it the 84% rule because really what I'm saying is if you can please most of the constituency and move forward, move forward. Now look, if you're not going to meet everyone's concept of perfection and you're not going to try because you're going to follow the 84% rule, there's a flip side to that coin. And that is you can't demand your concept of perfection, right? If you demand your concept of perfection, you may stop all progress as well. Follow the 84% rule there. If you can get 84% of what you want and still be able to live comfortably with what it is you're seeking to achieve, take it and run. Take it and run. So follow the 84% rule. Number 4, be biased toward action. Be biased toward action. Too often, those like you who are trying to lead, trying to bring about positive change, they become paralyzed by at least 2 things. First is the fear of failure. And we were just talking about that in the back of the room before I stood up here to speak. The fear of failure paralyzes us. If I try that, what if it doesn't work? And then nothing happens. Well, there is value in failure. There is value in failure. If what you do is you don't become a turtle and pull into your shell, but instead what you do is you step back and say, whoa, that didn't work the way I thought it was going to work. What do I need to do differently? How do I need to approach? How do I improve myself so that I don't have that kind of failure the next time? So be biased toward action and don't fear failure. The second paralysis is the fear that the better deal will come along. And here's what I mean by that. Too often, you're having to make a decision. And I know part of the work y'all were doing this morning. You're trying to decide what's the way to approach water use on lawns, or how do we approach school finance. And people say, golly, I hate to step out on that because if I say what I'm thinking, if I get out there, what if somebody has a better idea? Will I look silly? Will I look dumb? Maybe they won't have a better idea next week. Maybe it'll be next month or a year from now, and we'll have already started. You can't be paralyzed by the fear of the better deal coming along. Now, I learned this the hard way. I learned this very personally. When I was younger than you, I started dating my wife. When I was 14 years old, we started dating. I was a freshman in high school. And I remember very distinctly that she wouldn't go out with me at first. 1973. Boswell High School, Saginaw, Texas, homecoming. I went up and I said, Liz, will you go to homecoming with me? She looked me dead in the eye and she said, no. I'm waiting for someone else to ask me. Yeah, right. And we don't have time at this lunch hour for me to go into how mean that is. And it's obvious that I'm over it. But here's the rule of life. The girl was waiting for the better deal to come along, and it didn't. She got me. My point is, you can't be paralyzed by the fear of failure or the fear that a better idea or deal will come along. You have to be biased toward action. Rule number 5, never forget that hope matters. Never forget that hope matters. Now, what do I mean by that? What gets people out of bed every morning? What gets people to want to listen to you when you tell them you have an idea about how things can be better? What makes people be willing to follow you? It all boils down to one thing. It boils down to their hope that by listening to you, by following you, by getting out of bed in the morning, things can be better. The good leaders will take the time to analyze the people they're dealing with and ask, what is motivating them? Where is their hope? Because once you identify why they're hopeful, once you identify what is motivating them out of a spirit of optimism and hope, then you're half the way there, because you now know how it is you can motivate them. Hope always matters. And you ought to ask that question no matter what you're coming up with, whether it's school finance, whether it's water, whether it's health care. Where is the hope? Because it always matters. Rule number 6, have a short-term focus, but with a long-term vision. A short-term focus, but with a long-term vision. Now, talking to young people, this is one of the most difficult things for me to bring up, because having thinking about short-term sometimes gets lost, because you've got your whole lives in front of you. And that's true. But I can tell you, I come at this from another very personal place. I am a cancer survivor. I'm supposed to be dead a couple of times over. When I was 32 years old, which doesn't sound that young to you right now, but I'll tell you, that's real young. When I was 32 years old, I thought I had the world by the tail. Things were going great. And I was diagnosed with cancer. I had 3 surgeries, chemotherapy, and it looked like I was going to live, so I went back to work like a madman. And 2 years later, on a routine CAT scan, they found another tumor in my abdomen and went in and cut me from stem to stern. Basically, they field dressed me is what they did, and took out lymph nodes that are in my abdomen. That was in 1995. That was in 1995. I hadn't had any surgeries or chemo or anything since then, so that's not going to be what kills me. But my point is, it changed the way I look at things. I used to get real worked up about long-term plans. If you had asked me when I was 32, what are you going to be doing in 15 years? I bet I could have told you within about a week of what I thought I was going to be doing. But one of the things I learned is that those long-term plans may not come to fruition, not because of any fault of mine, but because of something like cancer. So what I do now is I live my life in increments of time. And there are different increments for different things, right? I've got a son, as I've told you a couple of times. He's going to graduate from high school, and hopefully he's going to go to college. Well, there's an increment of time I'm dealing with right there. I'm up for re-election. If I get re-elected in November, we'll pull out of a hat to determine whether it's a 2-year or a 4-year term, but that's an increment of time. And I focus very strongly on that increment of time, short-term focus, because I don't know what the next increment looks like. But I always do it. That's not to say, the short-term focus isn't just to have fun well, I better have fun. I might be dead tomorrow. No, what I'm saying is have a short-term focus, but do it in such a way that if you get to live that long old life, if those dreams and aspirations, set them out there, set those goals high, and live that short-term focus with a long-term vision of where you want to be down the road. So have a short-term focus, but with a long-term vision. Rule number 7, know your core values and assets and be willing to admit your weaknesses. Know your core values and assets and be willing to admit your weaknesses. Now let me just tell you something. At 16, 17, and 18 years old, you are still developing your core values and your core assets. And it is a great time in life to sit down in a quiet place and think through, what are my core values? What do I really believe in? What is it that makes me hopeful? And also do that same analysis on what you consider to be your core assets. And then I'm going to ask you to do something over a lifetime. For the rest of your life, take time from time to time to reevaluate and ask yourself those questions again. You'll get busy, you'll get married, you'll be raising a family, you'll be in jobs that'll keep you tied up, and you'll think, I'll get to that. But people don't do it enough. Some people will tell you, oh, your core values don't change. Well, that's bull. They do change. You fall in love. You have children. You get sick. Things change. And so your values may change. What doesn't happen enough is you don't take the time to know how they've changed. So do that. And also be willing to admit your weaknesses. You know, we don't like doing that. And frankly, I don't have very many. But I know which ones I got. They may not be many, but they're awful big. And I say that obviously as a joke. I try very hard to know what my weaknesses are, because that's where I want to surround myself with friends and family and coworkers and others that can fill in the gaps on my weaknesses. You got to be willing to admit it. None of us is perfect. Many of us have weaknesses that don't keep us from achieving great goals. Admitting them doesn't keep us from achieving great goals. In fact, it will help us achieve those great goals. So know your core values and assets and be willing to admit your weaknesses. Rule number 8, avoid the nitpickers, naysayers, and know-it-alls. Now, having started this speech by telling you to throw away the labels, those are 3 pretty good labels. Seriously, come on, we all know who they are, right? The nitpickers, the naysayers, and the know-it-alls. The nitpickers, you know, they're the folks that can just take an idea and just tear it limb from limb, beat it to death, always trying to find something negative. Of course, that's the naysayers too, right? The naysayers are the ones that always are saying no. Oh, that won't work. That won't work. Or the know-it-alls. Oh, my goodness. They're just so much smarter than the rest of us. So much holier than the rest of us. Well, they call it negative energy for a reason. They're probably part of that 16% I was telling you about. So the key point, in my opinion, is you got to hear from them. You got to listen. But at some point, you got to move on. And you can't let them drag the whole thing down. And by the way, I'll tell you, some folks that are nitpickers, naysayers, and know-it-alls, they get themselves elected to office. In fact, a lot of them do. I served with one at one point who sat over to my right. And I mean, week after week, that person was right there, just nitpicking, being holier than thou, naysaying. And I'll tell you, to this good day, no matter where I am, no matter how tired I am, no matter how bad my head hurts or my back hurts or I'm lonely or I'm hungry, if I look over to my right and she's not there, I'm having a good day. Avoid the nitpickers, naysayers, and know-it-alls. Rule number 9, Create new and different constituencies. Create new and different constituencies and avoid creating unnecessary enemies. Man, our politics today is defined by avoiding creating new and different constituencies and finding pleasure in creating unnecessary enemies. It seems to be the way we do things now. But here's what I mean. Many times you'll have a good idea. You'll have an idea about how you can make progress on one of the topics that you're working on. And then what you should always do is step back and say, all right, I know what constituency I'm meeting with that. Let me ask a question. If I did that slightly differently, would that open up others to being for it? Would that create new constituencies for that? And avoid creating unnecessary enemies. And what I mean by that is that 16%, that 16% may not have been for me that time, but they might be for me next time if I don't do things in a way that has to beat them up. In order for you to succeed, it doesn't require that you destroy the person on the other side. And too often that's how politics are. I might get what I want, but I'm not happy until you're beat down. Well, that's not the way to do it. If I can get what I want, I don't have to make you the enemy, because the next time I may need you on the next issue. You may be opposed to me this time, but if I do it the right way and I don't create unnecessary enemies, then I'll have you as an ally the next time. So create new and different constituencies and avoid creating unnecessary enemies. And rule number 10, focus on the positive. Focus on the positive. Here's the thing. Don't do something just because you're mad. Don't try to lead. Don't get involved in things. Don't get involved in issues just because you're angry. We got enough of that. We got enough folks that the only thing that seems to motivate them ain't hope. It's anger. It's that they're irritated. They're mad. Come at it from a positive approach and find the positive even in the worst of circumstances. Give you an example. My mother, who died of cancer at 62 years old, she'd been sick forever. She got diagnosed at 41. And her rule of life became, keep me alive for 6 months. Because who knows what they'll invent that'll keep me alive another 6 months, and who knows what I'll get to see. And it worked out. I mean, by the time she died, they had thrown everything medical science had. But in addition to that, she got to see both her boys graduate from college and law school. She got to see all 4 of her grandchildren born. She got to see a way too short, but a neat retirement with my old man. But when it was time, she was in the hospital. She was here in Austin at Seton. And the doctor told us, well, the best we can do is probably give her some blood and get her home so she can die at home, which is the way she wanted to die. So my brother and I, my brother's 2 years younger than me, he and I went in and we give her this news. She handled it, I mean, she's a tough old boot. She handled it exactly the way you'd expect. And she said, I want to give some things away. And my brother and I said, oh, Mother, you don't need to do that. We get along fine. We'll get things divided up. She said, no, I want to do this. So she turns to my brother and she says, Kyle, do you want A, B, C, and D? And he said, yeah. She said, okay, well, that's yours. Then she turns to me. She says, do you want the clock that hung in Daddy's office all those years? And it's just this great old clock. I said, yeah, sure. She said, where are you going to put it? And I said, Mother, now you know when you're gone, you're not going to be able to control things like that. And she said, well, yes, but you might not get the clock. Good point, right? Billy Faye Watson could find the power even in the most drastic circumstances. She could find the positive. She could find the funny, the humor. That's what you need to do. Find the positive and focus on the positive. Rule 10.5. Don't take yourself too seriously. Don't take yourself too seriously. Have fun. God bless you all, and thank you very much. Questions? They tell me we've got time for questions, so let's do that. I think I see a microphone over there. Man, you guys are going to be an easy crowd. You don't ask me any questions. Somebody have one? Yeah, right there.
Senator, can you explain to the students why you got involved with public policy? Why did you get involved, and maybe share some of your experiences, maybe the highlights, and although we're supposed to focus on the positive, maybe some of the things that made you think, why am I doing this, and then kind of what gave you that vision to continue with what you're doing?
Yeah, I'd love to. I was raised in kind of a service family, and bless you. And the service, my father was a kind of a late bloomer. He got out of high school and he didn't go to college. In fact, he was raised in a set of circumstances that were not great. And his father had passed away when he was very young, and he didn't go to college. And his older brother came back from the Navy. He didn't go to college. He came back from the Navy, and he couldn't find work. So he said to my father, "I'm gonna re-up." And my father said, "Well, if you'll join the Air Force instead of the Navy, I'll go with you, and we'll go the same place." Which, by the way, the Air Force doesn't let you do that, but it shows how little they knew about what they were doing. When he came out of the Air Force, he was an electrical technician, so he had a pretty good job with the Federal Aviation Administration. But he wakes up at about 26 years old, and he's married and got a couple of kids, and he's saying, you know, I'm going to try something else. So what he did was he went to night school for many years. It took a long time to get an engineering degree. And he stayed with the Federal Aviation Administration. So service was a big part of what he did. And he loved that. My mother was a nurse, and watching her serve people meant something to me. So my household was kind of a service household. And so I did a lot of different things. I was involved in the Young Lawyers and did service that way, but I'd never run for office until I ran for mayor. And frankly, go back to that short-term vision and short-term focus and long-term vision idea. One of the gifts of cancer, and it's hard to say, a lot of people don't appreciate that, but there are many gifts to getting cancer if you pay attention. One of the gifts was it gave me the freedom to try something different. And that was, I decided to try running for office. I wanted to see what it was like. I wanted to see what that kind of service would be. And if I didn't like it, short-term focus, I'd go find something else to do for a little while. I loved it. I still do. Although, back to the second part of your question, which is there are times when you don't succeed. Some of my lowest points have been when it's been very hard to get something done. Just this morning, I had a conference telephone call on a project I'm working on in Austin right now, where I'm trying to get a medical school at the University of Texas at Austin. And it's not easy. And I've got some naysayers and some know-it-alls out there that are making my life pretty miserable. But they don't have not all their ideas are bad. It's just that some of them are creating their way of stopping things is to take a stick and put it in the spokes of my wheel and just stop that bicycle right there, as opposed to kind of riding along with us and trying to fix it as we go. You're going to find that some of your lowest moments are going to be when you just know you've got a good idea, and others, for whatever reason, are trying to mess with it. It may be for raw political reasons. It may be that they don't want me to succeed. It may be that they just disagree with the use of money for that kind of thing. They want money to go to something else. It's that kind of thing. I've always found, though, that if you take a deep breath, you step back, maybe take a day off from working on that, and go back to my rule of listening, you can figure out a way to get around those things. One of my biggest disappointments, I'll give you two. One was when I was mayor, I wanted to bring a light rail system to Austin. And we had an election, and we barely lost. I mean, we just barely lost. It's been it's a disappointment to me. In 2002, I left the mayor's office, actually resigned in 2001, so that I could run for Attorney General of the state of Texas. I was the nominee of the Democratic Party to run for Attorney General of the state of Texas in 2002. Well, let me tell you something, folks. You ain't calling me general today. That tells you I lost. That was a big disappointment for about 2 weeks. You know, short-term focus. What's the next thing? I love being in the Texas Senate. This has been a great, I could actually make the argument, this worked out better for me than winning the Attorney General's race. And I don't think I'm just rationalizing something. But you're going to lose. You're not going to succeed every time. I fear failure as much as the next guy. I want to win every chance I get, but I'm just not going to get that worked up about it. I hope that answered the question. Yes? Where are you from?
I'm from Brownsville.
Good.
Yes. Thank you. Seeing as your life right now, as you can see, like how your past and everything, would you like, not say regret, but like, would you change, like, would you have liked to do something else?
Yeah.
Or would you like to have changed something, or?
That's a great question.
Or do you like your life how it is now?
You know, that's a great question. I'll give you a two-part answer to that. I don't know that I have any regret. I think you probably asked that question the right way. I'm not sure I look back with regret because things have worked out pretty well for me. But I would change at least two things. The first one's going to sound a little goofy. Maybe both of them sound goofy, but I know the first one will. When I was in high school, I was a debater in high school, and I was in drama. And I loved the theater. In fact, my first memories of Austin, Texas was coming down here for the state one-act play competition. Heck, I was Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof. If somebody asked, I might sing. But anyway, no, I probably wouldn't do that. Fear of failure would be a little strong there. But here's the thing. I loved the theater. And over my adult life, I would not have pursued being an actor or anything, but I've not spent the kind of time that I wish I had seeing more theater, doing that kind of thing. Now, you may not care about theater at all, but the point is that there is something you really like right now. There's some things you really like. Don't lose sight of those along the way. Don't get too distracted. That'd be the rule or the lesson. The second thing is, I graduated from high school in 1976, and then I graduated from law school in 1981. So do the math. 5 years. If I have a regret, that may be my big regret, is that I didn't take the time to really explore a lot of other things. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be in the courtroom, and I didn't spend any time taking classes that didn't matter to that effort. I look back now and wish I'd have taken more history. I wish I'd have taken more philosophy. I wish I'd have taken more religion. It would have been nice to do that. You know, you're on this great campus of this university here. I've got an older son too. I haven't talked about him, but I told him early on, son, go stumble into that Blanton Museum. Go to the Ransom Center. Go explore. Don't become so directed that you don't take the time to explore things that you might never have another chance to do. Frankly, if I have a regret, it's that I didn't explore more when I was your age. Yes, my Bastrop County constituent.
I'm Kayla Peterson, and I'm from Bastrop, Texas.
You go to Bastrop High?
Yes, sir.
Good deal, okay.
Okay, so my question is, what is your long-term vision if you are reelected?
Oh, good.
I'm just curious, because I'm from Bastrop.
Makes me sorry I called on my constituent. No, that's a great question, and one that I'll mention 3 things to you. Number one is, I've already mentioned this medical school. I think we've come up with a new model for creating medical education in the state of Texas. It's not the old model of a community saying, we want a medical school, and then asking the legislature to just fund it. That model is gone, if it ever really existed. So what we've done is we've come up with a model that is more organic and more grassroots, where you bring together collaboration of the different assets that you have in the community. The University of Texas at Austin, the University of Texas System, Seton Family of Hospitals, Central Health, which is our Travis County healthcare district, and others. And we put all that together to help fund and create an integrated healthcare system that would include a medical school. That is part of my long-term vision. In fact, when I gave the speech, just to show you how I think in increments, but also long-term, the speech I gave was 10 goals in 10 years. So to do this, it's going to take 10 years to pull this off. So 10 goals in 10 years. That's number one. Number two, the way the state of Texas budgets is based upon deception, diversions, and debt. And frankly, a little bit of denial, a whole lot of denial. I am working very hard to put together to pass what I call my honesty agenda, where we have more honesty in the budgeting process. We had great success last session, and I'm pleased that Texas Monthly even mentioned me in their listing of legislators. They listed me for my honesty agenda, but we've still got a whole lot of work to do. So I'm going to focus on that. And I think that will make a difference. If we're successful there, that makes a difference across the board. Because anything the budget touches, if you're dishonest about the budget, if you're deceptive about the budget, you're dishonest about schools, you're dishonest about health care, you're dishonest about higher ed, roads, you name it. So that's the second thing. And then the third is a focus on public education. Not only should we reform government to do a better job in honesty and budgeting, but we have to come up with a permanent solution for funding our public schools. Tripping from crisis to crisis, from lawsuit to lawsuit. This state was founded in part, the Declaration of Independence of this state speaks to the need for a public school system and the failure of the government in power at that time to provide a public school system. We're founded on that. Our Constitution, it's embedded in our Constitution. We must come up with a permanent solution for school funding. So those would be three things that I'd mention. Water, let me say it to you guys. You're the age that I need to say this to. If we don't do a better job, and you're looking at the generation, my generation inherited excess infrastructure. Our roads, when I got out of law school, our roads were second to none in this country, and we had excess capacity. We could have more folks come to Texas. Our schools, our schools of higher education, we weren't worried about water. I worry that if we don't reform government, you will be the first generation of Texans, or be part of the first generation of Texans, that doesn't inherit any excess capacity, because those in control of government today are failing. We need to be investing in your future. And that means investing in things like our water resources, our public schools, our schools of higher education, things of that nature. So that's my long-term vision. We done? She's standing up, right? You see her over there? You want to do one more question? Sure. The questions are short, it's the answers. Yeah. One more question and then we'll be done. But you can tell I enjoy being with you all.
It's a short question. But, okay. My name's Nasheen and I'm from Irving. And
Irving?
Yes.
Which high school? Nimitz?
Academy.
Ah, okay. I know that one.
Well, I was wondering, if you don't mind answering, what made your wife realize that you were the right guy for her?
I mean, look at me. Look at me. Plus, I don't think that other guy ever asked her out. So, I mean, yeah, I think she was left with the slim pickings. You know, I don't know. I don't know, and I try not to ask because I'm afraid she'll tell me. Guys, the fact that you're here, the fact that you're so engaged, makes me very hopeful. makes me very hopeful. That's where when I say hope matters, that's where my hope comes from. God bless you all. Good luck to you. Stay on this path. Take care.
Senator Watson, on behalf of the Subiendo class of 2012, we'd like to give you this token of appreciation.
That's great. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you. Appreciate you. Keisha, thank you very much.
That was
My
wonderful.
pleasure.
Thank you, Senator Watson, for that excellent advice on how to work together not only this week, but certainly for the rest of your life. Your top 10 rules are certainly words of wisdom that we should all follow, so thank you very much for sharing those. And certainly we will take your advice to explore because we are taking our museum tours next. So before we depart for our museum tours, I wanted to also recognize and thank Dean Gilligan for being with us again today, so thank you very much. We will now, if you will break into your groups, your team leaders will come and tell you which tours you are going on, and we will depart here momentarily. Thank you very much.